Hey everyone, the following is a video that I made for TikTok. It was about 10 minutes for TikTok, but there was more to it that I cut out in order to meet that kind of cutoff for TikTok videos. And I wanted to share the full version here. But the algorithms here are different than on TikTok. So things that are trending on TikTok may rise and fall before they ever make it to YouTube or Instagram. If they make it there at all. Sometimes, discourse happens, rises, falls, and dies on TikTok without ever making it outside of that ecosystem. So what I'm talking about in this video is some discourse that's been occurring around Nebraska ranchers specifically. There are some videos going around, which I'm going to show some clips here of before I get into my video, but videos going around talking about Nebraska ranchers going bankrupt in the next 6 months. So I looked around trying to find this original video and trying to find data that would substantiate these claims that Nebraska farmers or ranchers are going bankrupt in the next 6 months because of Donald Trump's policies, and could not find it because it's not true. It is something that I can't determine where exactly it came from, but as I talk about in the video, there would be data to back that up. There would be reports to back that up. And it's so quickly believed because people on the left want to have this experience of seeing Donald Trump's supporters realize the errors of their ways. It's often called FAFO content or fuck around and find out content. Everyone really wants to see Trump supporters realize, oh no, I made a mistake. And do so publicly, and they make these videos where they shame people for the way that they voted, and it's tacky at best. It's tacky, but it's also extremely harmful, and it further polarizes and divides the country. And in this case, with the Nevada ranchers thing, it's especially ironic because it is based off something that's not real. So in this thirst for the FAFO content, they've really done what many Trump supporters have done, which is believe any lie that's told to them as long as it reinforces a narrative that they want to believe. Now, the videos that I'm going to share are videos that are generally responding to this idea that these ranchers are going to go bankrupt in 6 months. A lot of people have seen videos talking about the ranchers going bankrupt as a result of Donald Trump's policies. And there's a phrase that's kind of started a trend a little bit, which is, does anybody care about Nebraska? Now, I haven't been able to find the original source video that put this bug into everyone's ear, that got them thinking that Nebraska ranchers are going bankrupt in the next 6 months, specifically 6 months. Now, if you know me, you know I'm not supportive of almost any of Donald Trump's policies, so this is not me trying to own the libs by any mean. But I do believe in truth, and I do believe that misinformation is one of the most dangerous things that we have facing us in the 21st century, in our politics, in our culture. The threat of misinformation cannot really be overstated, and for the most part, it has been understated and not prioritized in the way that it should. And a lot of times when it is discussed in the context of right-wing misinformation. But there is a pretty significant left-wing misinformation ecosystem, and people who are on the left are just as susceptible to misinformation as people on the right. And since a lot of people don't necessarily have TikTok, I pulled a couple of those TikToks that I'm talking about to give you an example of. I downloaded them and I've put them into this video so that you don't have to follow a link to get to them. But I've also linked them below so you can go and see the full videos if you do have TikTok. And then there are two other things. One, I want to draw your attention to the descriptions below, where I've linked 2 podcast episodes that I think really help to support why I believe this is so important. One of them is an episode of the Ezra Klein show from the New York Times, and the other is the most recent episode of the Weekly Show with Jon Stewart, which is the weekly podcast kind of appendix to the Daily Show. The one from the Ezra Klein show talks about this kind of idea that I flick at in the video about political parties, about the constitutional crisis, and about how political parties are responsible for a lot of the issues that we're seeing in today's politics. And the other is with the daily or the weekly show is an interview with Jon Stewart. It really gets into a lot of the ins and outs of the threats of misinformation to the ability for democracy to even survive, not just as something that enshittifies democracy, but as something that is absolutely fatal to democracy. So between those two episodes, I think that they help to inform a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about in this video. I really encourage you to take the time to go watch those or listen to them. You can get them in audio form and video form. I believe both of them are available in both formats. They're each about an hour long, and they're great episodes. Really cannot recommend them enough. I'm traveling cross country, so I'm sitting actually in my truck right now and filming this, but I filmed a lot of my stuff last night when I was at the hotel, so you'll see a shift in venue here. But that's all I got. I hope everyone is having a lovely Friday. Thank you.
I'm so excited for everyone to call me a bad person again in my comments, but guess what? I do not care about Nebraska going bankrupt in 6 months. I do not care. I do not care. Maybe a few other of those red states should go bankrupt in 6 months so the blue states can swoop in to save them, so they can understand that we are not the bad ones. We are not the poor ones. We are not the ones who cannot survive under the orange turds' crazy policies. But you know why I don't feel bad for Nebraska? You know why? Because I believe I heard 65% of their workforce is undocumented people, which means they're not coming to work anymore,
Well, in today's episode of F Around and Find Out MAGA edition, cattle ranchers in the state of Nebraska who voted overwhelmingly for Donald Trump fear the impact on their businesses when Donald Trump implements his mass deportation program that he campaigned on for almost 2 years, that they voted for. And now they're realizing that if he actually implements it, they'll go bankrupt.
So this morning I ended up on Nebraska Talk, and it was a bunch of people crying, why does anybody care about Nebraska? When we voted for Kamala Harris, when I cast my vote for Harris, that was me saying, I care about you and I want you to survive and thrive. Okay, you knew better than anybody else that your state thrives and survives off of migrants' backs. Okay, and instead of them waiting for ICE to come, they decided to peace out before they could come and get them.
So the Nebraska rancher thing is bullshit by all accounts that I can find. There is no proof that after a couple hours of looking I can find. And the fact is that if that was true, there would be proof. That's not something that's going to happen, that there's going to be no way to verify it within a couple hours of looking. Really within a couple minutes of looking, you guys. That's the sort of thing that there will be a source for. Someone will be reporting on it. They have journalists in Nebraska. So, and it really frustrates me. I'm going to explain why, so I hope you'll stick with me, because it implicates a lot of issues, and I think it's important for us to understand why, from my perspective. I don't have all the answers, but this is what I think. So one, let's start with the basics here. The situation that we are in this country is due in large part to a massive misinformation ecosystem in which we all live, okay? So voting for Donald Trump is one transgression that a person can make that contributes to the awful ecosystem and the awful reality that we are all inhabiting. It is not the only shitty thing that you can do to hurt this country and to hurt your fellow American. It doesn't just begin and end with voting for Donald Trump. And so spreading misinformation is one of those things. It is one of the most fatal flaws in our media environment right now, is how quick and easy it is, my apologies, to spread misinformation, and how gullible everyone is. There are people who are doing a really good job creating misinformation. But But there are also people just doing a sloppy job, and tons of people believe them. And if we are supposed to be the people for whom facts matter, and who believe in science, and who believe in data, and who believe in truth, right? Then we need to hold ourselves to that. And it doesn't take much to go and look, you guys. It doesn't take much to verify something. So that's one. Spreading misinformation, very bad. It's not just like a kind of thing. It's bad. Should not be doing it. I guess two. This specific story, the reason why it agitates me is because American farmers are struggling, and Nebraskan farmers certainly as well, and ranchers, people in the American agricultural system are struggling, and are at like a precipice where terrible things are going to happen to them. And Trump is going to absolutely cause a bunch of those things to get much worse, but they were already bad and very bad. And it is due to both the Republicans and the Democrats. And this idea and this narrative that this whole Nebraska thing kind of reinforces is that everything bad that happens is Donald Trump's fault. It's not. Or that it began with Donald Trump. It didn't. We need to be very clear-eyed if we are going to be talking to people about how this country gets better and why we're in the situation we are in. And if you are going to take the time to address farmers and ranchers and agricultural workers in this country, and you're going to browbeat them about the way that they voted, and give off this impression that, like, oh, if you had just voted for Kamala Harris, you wouldn't be in this situation. You guys, I've got bad news for you. Farmers were not going to be in a good situation because of Kamala Harris. She was not going to save farmers from the myriad headwinds that are against them and that are causing family farms and small farms to close all across this country. Bankruptcies skyrocketed last year after years of actually trending a little bit downward for small family farms in this country. In 2024, while Biden was still president. Okay, so there are huge, huge headwinds against American farmers, ranchers, agricultural workers, and the agricultural industry writ large. Okay, even for large operations, but it is a problem made by those large operations. So I'm not really speaking about them. But big corporate agriculture is something that is an industry that puts a ton of money into the pockets of Democrats and Republicans. Okay, that is a bipartisan fuck up. And so to sit there and browbeat people about how they voted, when if they voted for Kamala Harris, they would be in a pretty terrible situation too. Not the same exact situation, but if you're going to lose your farm either way, does it matter if you lose it because of tariffs or if you lose it because of some other fucking farm policy that the Democrats are supportive of? You know what I mean? Need to be clear-eyed and need to be respectful of the fact that people are up against a lot of issues, and a lot of issues that have been caused by both the Republicans and the Democrats. So this whole narrative bothers me so much because there's just this thirst I find among liberals and Democrats to not acknowledge the things that they have done wrong to lose voters to Donald Trump. Donald Trump should not have won. It should not have been possible for Donald Trump to win. There is a party in this country that made it possible for Donald Trump to win, and that's the Democrats, okay? And we need to look that square in the face, okay? If the Democrats had not been proposing the policies that they've been proposing, or, mind you, had proposed any policies that would benefit Americans to begin with. Because I'd like you to ask yourself the question, we all have seen what Donald Trump has done in the last 2 months. If everything was switched and the Democrats held the House and the Senate and the White House, what would have been their big signature policy? What would they have done? What would they have done on day one? What would the executive orders have been that Kamala Harris would have signed? What would be the big, massive structural changes that the Democrats would have done to help us? I've been alive long enough to know that the answer to that question is I don't know. And probably nothing. Okay? I saw what happened with the Affordable Care Act. Okay? I saw the Democrats not even push a public option and sell the American people on a fucking bill that forced us all to buy private health insurance or get taxed for it. All right? That was the best they could come up with, and they had a trifecta. All right? So don't stop saying that all that people needed to do was vote for Kamala Harris. All right? I voted for Kamala Harris. So I don't want to hear that from you people either. Get fucking real. And I guess the last thing about this that drives me nuts is this rah team idea, right? The Democrats are not our team, okay? They are not. And this mentality that so many people are getting into, where they just hate people who voted for Donald Trump so badly that they want to see them hurt, it's the same mentality that led those people to vote for Donald Trump. I personally believe that one of the biggest driving forces behind people voting for Donald Trump wasn't about the eggs, wasn't about any of the bullshit that they fucking said in these surveys. I think it's because they fucking hate the other side. This hyper-partisanship is going to be what breaks us. And it was what has already broken this country. And it's why, and this is very important, this is why the Democrats are failing us right now. The constitutional crisis that we have right now is not necessarily what Donald Trump is doing. I know that might sound shocking. It's not what Donald Trump is doing. It's the fact that Congress is not stopping him from doing what he's doing, okay? Because every executive order he's signed, every fucking department that he's closed without actually closing it, all the stuff Donald Trump is doing, those are all functions that Congress has the right to do, and that Congress has not done, and that Congress could stop Donald Trump from doing. But Congress hasn't done it because Congress is run by the Republicans, and that is the problem. The problem is that we have national political parties that unify issues across geographies and wield incredible power and are nowhere in the Constitution. Our founders did not want us to have political parties, and they were more concerned about large population states versus small population states. That's why we have a Senate, and that's why we have an electoral college. They were wrong about that, though. Never once in the history of this country have large population states and small population states banded on opposite sides of an issue. And what they failed to account for was the fact that we would have large-scale national political parties like we do. So, the issue that we are facing right now is that the Republican Party and the Democratic Party exist throughout all levels of government, and they unify action across those levels of government, and they wield power and they use mechanisms within our government that were not meant to be used by unified political parties. And so the fact that Donald Trump is able to get away with everything he's able to get away with is because he is enabled by the Republican Party. And in order to break that, we have to break the political parties. And the Democrats will never do that. And that is why they are sitting idly by and letting Donald Trump do whatever he wants. Because their thought is, well, there's only two political parties. So if Donald Trump fucks this country up, all we have to do is sit here and just wait. And then we'll get into power. And every time that you do a FAFO fucking video, you are enabling that behavior. The Democrats don't deserve our vote any more than the Republicans deserve our vote. You understand? It doesn't matter how terrible Donald Trump is. It doesn't mean that the Democrats deserve anything from us. And this whole narrative is reinforcing that, and it is causing the problems that we have in this country, and it is why we are being failed by the Democrats, and it's why we are being failed by the Republicans and lied to by the Republicans and dragged into fascism by the fucking Republicans. We can stand firm on our morals and our beliefs and our philosophies and our values, but we need to stop standing firm on the Democrats. That is insane. And stop shitting on people just because they voted for fucking Donald Trump. It doesn't fucking matter. At this point, it's done. The milk is spilt, all right? And it was like $12 because of these tariffs and this fucking bird flu. It was very expensive milk that was spilled. I get it. We're upset. But we got to stop, you guys. Because the voting for Donald Trump, like I said, was one very bad action that somebody has taken. But it's not the only bad action that somebody can take. And we need to be very clear-eyed about the bad actions that we are participating in, because they can definitely add up to being just as bad as voting for Donald Trump. And so when we spread lies and when we spread division and when we hate on people who are hurting, We are no better than Trump supporters, and we gotta fucking stop doing it. And this is a great example of it. So get your shit together.